Good morning. I'm Terence Allmark. I'm the Business Development Manager at UKTelehealthcare. As we are waiting for attendees to join this morning, I'd just like to update you on our further events during this month. So we have 3 events planned for the month of June. Our next events will be on the 15th and then followed by one on the 29th. We will be sending you further information for details on those events, links and registration by email. We are also planning more events in the month of September. All of this information you can find also on our website, UKTelehealthcare.com, under the events section. So if you would like to visit on a regular basis for more information on the events and other details about UK Telehealthcare, please visit our website. So I'll just wait a little bit longer for attendees. I can still see some are joining. We have a full program for you today, so we'll need to go through that quite as per the program, to make sure everybody has an opportunity to speak and ask questions from the delegates. Okay, so you can see the program now on screen. We have 4 presentations this morning. We have a guest speaker from Reason Digital, followed by Legrand, Tunstall, and Chubb. And we also have a panel discussion, which is the 3rd section today. And that will also be, the presenters today will be part of that panel discussion, and they'll be joined by Yorby and Astroline. During today's events, if you like to ask a question, please use the chat facility, and I will take the questions that you have put on chat and ask the presenters, or put the questions to presenters at the end of each of their respective presentations. When you are asking questions, please use the panelists and attendees to write your questions, so that everybody who is today watching this event can be involved in the flow of the conversation. To tweet today's event, please use the @UK Telehealthcare News or the #text. So I think we need to now start. We have a good selection of delegates. I can still see a few joining, but now I'd like to present you, I have great pleasure in presenting our first presentation today, and I'd like to ask Matt Harwood to join us. Matt is the co-founder of Reason Digital, and if I just stop sharing my screen, if you could share your screen, please, Matt.
Absolutely, there you go.
Excellent. Thank you, and I'll hand you over to Matt now. Thank you, Matt.
Thanks, Terence. So yeah, good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us wherever you happen to be. So I was really thrilled to be invited by Terence to speak to you today about using digital as a force for social good. That is, of course, something that everybody involved in the entire chain of technology-enabled care is doing, and I have a kind of a slightly unique, slightly strange perspective on that, given my background. So I am the co-founder of a social enterprise which partners with organizations looking to do good, to find innovative ways to use digital technology to help them do more of that, or do it in new ways, or find new ways to help people. So we're a team of around 50 people in various parts of the world. We mainly partner with organisations in the UK, and what we really believe in is working alongside people with lived experience to help understand how technology could step up and serve them better, improve their lives, make them happier and healthier. So for the last 14 years, that's been my job is doing that myself and leading a team that does that. And I wanted to share with you a little bit about what I've seen in the sectors that I work in, and also 5 opportunities I think that exist for us all here that we can really learn from that. So I want to talk to you. The majority of the work that I've been doing in the past sort of year or so during the pandemic has been with the third sector, the charity sector. And it's been a really exciting space to be because there's a huge amount of innovation going on there. So I'm also going to share with you some innovations that have happened there to see if that sparks some kind of thoughts and ideas from you about how you could deploy technology-enabled care in different or new ways. So, of course, the pandemic hit all sectors. It hit the third sector, the charitable sector, particularly hard. You've probably not seen a street face-to-face fundraiser or a chugger for very long. So you've probably not had many of your mates asking you for sponsorship to do a marathon for very long, and those things have had massive knock-on effects financially. But also, charities are finding that they can't deliver their services in the same traditional ways that might have been kind of comfortable and established for them, which are often face-to-face. And really, the sector's been going on a journey from understanding that digital can help them talk about the good work that they do, to that it can support them to raise funds and support for that work, through to that digital can actually be used to deliver the work and actually deliver on the mission. And this process was happening very slowly until COVID hit the sector. And I think that's particularly true for medical charities and health charities as well. And here's some of the stats. 66% of charities were delivering literally all of their work, all of their services entirely remotely in summer of last year. And we did some research into the British public's behaviour around the accessing of health and charitable services. And we found that those services the access to those services digitally had increased by 23% in just 2 months, which is completely, we've been doing this kind of research for a while. It's completely unprecedented, and it's kind of not hard to guess why, is it really? So really, I see kind of 5 opportunities that come out of this for those of us working in technology-enabled care. To perhaps work a little bit more closely or learn from what's been going on in the charitable sector and the sectors in which people are using digital as a force for good. And I think the first real advancement that we've seen that I think is a huge opportunity for us all is a digitally addressable volunteer workforce. So actually having the ability to tap into an army of volunteers to provide support perhaps in ways that, local authorities or housing associations or clinical commissioning groups can't afford to provide, or perhaps it's inappropriate for them to provide. So the app here on the left that you can see is an app called GoodSam, which is deployed by the Royal Voluntary Service. That's a database of, I think, now 750,000 volunteers. And most of those are plugged into this app. They can receive alerts to place phone calls to vulnerable individuals during the pandemic, to go on pharmacy runs for them, to pick up food for them. Is some of the things that you can do, and in fact I've done because I've volunteered with the service as well. The other on the right there is a platform called GRS. It's another mobile platform that a lot of the St John Ambulance volunteers have. Again, I'm one of them, so I use that app to find and sign up for shifts as a vaccinator, going out into community centres and vaccinating people during the pandemic. And both of these things have kind of really arisen as a result of the pandemic. As you can hear, they're very specific volunteering opportunities. But clearly, it's exposed a huge public sentiment and a huge public desire to help. And I don't think that that's going to go away. If we can really seize the moment to make the most of this kind of digitally addressable volunteer workforce, there's all sorts of opportunities for that, for care within the community, care within the home. The other opportunity that I really see that the third sector has kind of always had an interest in is around group and population research. So they're not just concerned with the impact on the individual, but organizations that have a dedicated focus on being a force for good for a particular service group can be very interesting partners to us in technology enabled care, because they have a deep understanding of the needs and lived experiences of that population. Crucially, they always want to know more about that in order for them to improve their services, but also perhaps make new discoveries about treatments, about diagnosis methods, things along those lines. So one such example is with Wellchild here, a project that we worked on at Reason Digital. They have a website where parents access up to 7,000 leaflets for medication that young people, that children can need to take if they are in particular need of it. And we researched the needs of this group alongside them to understand how digital could better enable the care of these children. And we went on quite a journey with that. We asked parents to provide diaries over WhatsApp. We found that some of these parents are looking after these children for 18 hours a day. And they communicated that to us in all sorts of ways. Like you can see on screen, somebody just screenshotted all the alarms they have to set for the medications that they have to give, starting at 6 a.m, finishing at midnight. And working alongside that group, we developed a mobile application that allows them to track the delivery of that medication, flag when things are missed. And crucially, that's been kind of less about the parents, and it's been more about handing that care over to a carer, to a respite carer, to a family member. And these insights that we got from this process, Wellchild have used alongside other insights that they've collected online to really redevelop the way that they're providing these specialist services to parents and families of very sick children. And I think that's a great example that actually you might only count a small number of these people amongst the customer group or the service group that you are providing, but actually a third sector partner that is digitally enabled can really elevate the service offer. And I think there's also huge opportunities for the data that we as technology enabled care providers are capturing on people from sensors and other kind of and other methods, and actually finding ways to share this with these patient groups and third sector organizations so that they can develop insights from it that can help everybody that's working with those people to improve the care that we're giving. We also have specialist service delivery as an opportunity. I think it's impossible, to provide the full complement of services that are necessary for every individual that we're in the chain of care for. But third sector organisations are increasingly finding ways to be an addressable service to you digitally. So something that can be ordered, perhaps delivered through an app, a video call, or perhaps even delivered by post. One of the organisations that we work with at Reason is MSI Reproductive Choices, formerly Mary Stopes International. You might know them as that. So they've been using telemedicine, and we've been redesigning the user journey around this to provide at-home abortion pills. This is something that perhaps wouldn't really be that conceivable before the COVID lockdown. And I think it's a great example, just one of thousands of examples I could use actually, of the specialist services that are now available to us via telemedicine that simply wouldn't have been available before. Inclusion and ethics is something that obviously, quite rightly, is very high on the agenda right now, as it always should be. It's us working in technology-enabled care, we're no strangers to this, and the ethics involved in what we do. I think charities in the third sector have an incredibly important role to play here if you invite them in, because they are ways to access people with specific lived experience that might only make up a minority of people that you are in the chain of care for. So a good example of this is Scope, that have a digital research panel. So for any digital service that you're providing, which includes technology-enabled care, you can ask Scope to take that out to a panel of 800 disabled people, and they will test out that service for you and give you feedback about how it can be improved to be more accessible to them or to better meet their needs. And this is something that Scope's relatively pioneering in, but other charities are doing it as well. Parkinson's UK being another one that springs to mind, that have an app testing service. So do think about utilising those services. They're easier to utilise than ever now that they've been set up remotely during the pandemic. And the last thing I want to kind of flag as an opportunity really is around preventative care. Which is something that we're no strangers to in technology-enabled care, but I think there's such a diverse array of ways that we can support individuals with preventative care. And one of the examples from my work that I'm really proud of is the work that we've been doing with Age UK, which really switched me on to some pretty shocking things, actually, that I don't hear talked about as often in technology-enabled care, such as the fact that we have 1.2 million people in the UK who are chronically lonely, older people in the UK, and actually being lonely has quite a lot of comorbidities associated with it, and it's approximately as harmful as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. So if your grandmother was smoking 14 cigarettes a day and was lonely, you could only fix one of those things in the interest of her health, it would actually be better to fix the loneliness in terms of her physical health, which is quite startling. I was shocked by that. So we created a service with Age UK, which allowed people to sign up to be a volunteer befriender, because not every older person has a family member that can do that or can provide that as often as perhaps would be ideal. The system then digitally and automatically matches people using something akin to a dating algorithm, basically, but quite a strange one that doesn't just look for shared interests, but it looks around safeguarding concerns as well, about ensuring that a volunteer friend and an older person live at least 50 miles apart from each other to minimise the risk of them ever seeing each other in person, for example. So then we use the good old-fashioned telephone network. The majority of the service users that are on this, of course, are using a landline, but we're seeing increasing adoptions of mobile phones amongst the older person service user group. And we've also recently rolled out a trial where we are using machine learning and artificial intelligence to actually listen to these phone calls and analyze them for sentiment, so that we can understand if the older person is sounding really down, sounding really low, using a lot of negative words. We also use a risk scoring algorithm that we've bespoke designed, which allows Age UK to have calls flagged to them if certain things are discussed. And of course, that might be kind of obvious things that you would think about, like anything around suicide, overwhelm, etc. But there's also some perhaps less obvious things in there. Things around potential issues with, say, the older person being scammed. So there's a scam going around at the moment where older people are being sold fake vouchers for high street shops, and so we've trained our algorithm to start detecting that as well. So quite interesting there how we'll be able to get some of that scoring and some of that data actually just from voice and spoken word, without deploying particular sensors or direct measurement mechanics there. And this service, provided by a charity, has administered through our system 367,100,000 calls since the start of the pandemic. So each one of those being a minimum of a 30-minute call between a volunteer and an isolated older person in the UK, 367,000 of those. And that's only possible because this service is digitised from end to end, from sign up to safeguarding. So yeah, there's just one service that we could connect some of our service users to that might have a preventative function in terms of their health and well-being. It's one of very many that are available and are increasingly available in a digitized form that's very scalable to take the kind of demand that we might be able to partner with them to provide. So that's all I've got time to talk about today. Thanks for listening. I'll hand us back to Terence.
Thank you very much, Matt. Thank you for that. Very informative, relevant messages in your presentation. Matt will be joining us on the panel a little bit later in this event. So thank you for now, Matt.
You're very welcome. Thanks,
thank you. Just before we continue, I'd just like to say that this session and all sessions that we run are recorded, and the presentations will be available on the UKTelehealthcare site. So now, if I'd like to move on to our next presenter, and our next presenter is Stuart Carroll. Stuart Carroll is the National Sales Manager at Legrand, and Stuart will be discussing the Elliott program. So I'd like to now hand you over to Stuart.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Terence, thank you very much for that introduction, and And Matt, that was a very interesting presentation. The piece on loneliness especially resonated with me, and something I'd like to perhaps speak to you about again later on. I'm going to give a presentation this morning on Elliot. I'm just going to share my screen. And Terence, if you can just confirm that you can see that okay?
Yes, that's perfect. Thank you.
Okay, great stuff. So yeah, good morning everybody, and thanks to UKTelehealthcare for asking me to present this morning. My name is Stuart Carroll. I'm the National Sales Manager for Legrand Assisted Living and Healthcare. Digital technology will transform the way that we deliver our tech services and supplement the reactive alarm element with prediction prevention opportunities. Legrand have developed a unique portfolio of products and services, as well as a technical roadmap that allows our customers to transition from analog to digital in an efficient, effective, and perhaps most importantly, safety critical way. This presentation is designed to give you a flavor and overview of the systems and services that we can offer. We can be a one-stop shop if you want us to be, but we use open protocols and open APIs in order to give you the ultimate choice. And of course, with choice comes best value. The important takeaway from today's presentation is that, like it or not, we're all on a journey. We're all on a journey from analog to digital. And Legrand Assisted Living and Healthcare can help you to navigate the choppy waters as we transition to digital as your trusted technology partner. So who are we? For those who don't know, Legrand Assisted Living and Healthcare is an operational business unit of the Legrand Group. It currently consists of 5 specialist brands: Tyntec, Jontec, Aidcall, Neat, and Intervox, and provides market-leading technology-enabled care solutions for all health, housing, and social care environments. And we pride ourselves on offering solutions, not just products. We have a company ethos of choice and interoperability. Our products are designed and manufactured in the UK. They meet all European standards for safety critical systems. They're available on multiple frameworks and portals, including PFH, where we're ranked #1, but also on NHC, on ESPO, on Fusion 21. And they're designed to use open, non-proprietary critical communication protocols. And there is TS 50134-9 for tech, digital dispersed alarms, and there's BS 8521-2 for digital housing schemes, sheltered housing schemes. So the digital switchover has big implications for tech. Analog assisted living alarms and systems simply won't work in the same way over digital networks. They will become less reliable with a higher rate of failed calls, and traditional devices and systems will become tougher to install and to maintain. Legrand have used an internal program called Elliot, which stands for Electrical Legrand Internet of Things, to create a substantial program designed to transition all of our platforms from analog to digital. We've led on the development of new UK and European digital standards. We've developed a white paper along with the GGI, the Good Governance Institute. We launched that at the Houses of Parliament in February last year, just before COVID changed the world. And we've played an instrumental part in the Scottish Digital Pathfinder project. Our equipment and CMP, the cloud management portal, has recently been included in the Scottish Digital Telecare Security Assessed Suppliers Scheme, or Playbook for short. But most importantly, we're working in partnership with all of our customers throughout the UK to help them to plan their transition and realise the benefits of digital. We've used the Elliot programme to develop a unique portfolio of digital systems and services across the Tyntec, Jontec and Aidcall brands that can introduce safety critical into any environment that an older or a vulnerable person can call home, all the way from the individual property to the hospital ward. And when developing the next generation digital systems, our in-house R&D resource tries to consider the needs and wants of all of the stakeholders, from the boardroom to the resident and everybody in between. We needed to deliver state-of-the-art whilst maintaining simplicity when it came to how a resident would interact with the system during a crisis. We needed to consider the timeline to digital, recognise that in some cases there would be a disconnect between the ARC being able to accept digital calls and the residential equipment being able to make them. So hybrid technology was developed that can operate effectively over analog, yet switch seamlessly to digital once the ARC was capable. Solutions that could be purchased with confidence today when planning for the future. Safety critical, standards driven digital systems that leverage the significant advantages, such as faster connection and call delivery times, reduced call costs, interoperability through open protocols, and perhaps most importantly, the flow of data from the ARC to the furthest tip of the ecosystem, which is usually a telecare peripheral. We call this ecosystem TEO. It stands for Technology Always On. And I'm going to play a short video that details the TEO ecosystem and picks out some of the features and its benefits. So digital starts with the ARC. It is one very important end of the end-to-end solution. And your A to D plan, your analog to digital plan, needs to include moving it to a digital position. That means moving away from incoming PSTN lines and telephone calls towards SIP trunks and voice over internet with ISDN 30 in the middle. The reason we can't just move to a fully digital ARC is that until the last residential connection churns to digital, you need to be able to reliably monitor both analog and digital alarms from a single platform. Operationally, upgrading the ARC to digital has introduced many next generation features, including the ability to handle calls anytime from anywhere, which during the COVID pandemic has allowed for more flexible alarm call handling, helping large swathes of staff to work from home, and meant that vital tech services could continue to operate despite multiple lockdowns and other staff challenges. At the residential end, Reach IP digital home hubs can be deployed easily and, if appropriate, in a contact-free manner. They're largely plug and play. They just need a plug socket and then remotely configured and managed via the cloud. And this transforms the installation element, which would previously have required installers and advisors visiting the person at home. One particular use is in support of those being discharged from hospital to home with a dispersed alarm in order to give an immediate self-installed basic care package. The cloud management portal is provided securely by our CMP, which is called Pulse. It allows for remote, contact-free initial installation of a unit and programming changes thereafter. You can remotely add telecare and then post the peripheral out to the resident, a new pendant, for example. You can remotely change a unit's settings in line with the person-centered needs and, of course, their care packages. You can even switch the unit seamlessly from analog to digital once the ARC is ready, meaning there's no barrier to spending any new money on digitally capable products. This switch can be done individually or en masse at the touch of a button without ever needing to get in your cars, requiring access to a property, or making physical contact with the resident. Also, within Pulse, you can see, store, and analyze the data from all aspects of the ecosystem, all the way to the furthest tip. And as I mentioned, this furthest tip is usually a telecare peripheral. The Elliott program has allowed us to develop a comprehensive range of new digital peripherals that provide a consistent flow of data and don't just switch on and react in an alarm situation. And in the future, we're going to use this data together with developments in AI and machine learning to provide early intervention opportunities. Traditional tech has focused on reaction. A fall has to take place before a fall detector will place an alarm. A flood detector only warns of a crisis once the taps have been left on. If we can use the data to predict an event, early intervene and prevent it, then we can save both personally and financially. Prediction and prevention with the safety net of reaction should the crisis occur. This allows us to create true person-centered solutions in a home environment that is flexible and adaptable, the ability to age in place and remain independently at home for longer. So it's vital that a supplier offers much more than just products. As such, we have a range of services and departments that can be incorporated into a turnkey solution which is tailored to a customer's needs. Regional and national support tailored to you, free digital reviews designed to help you to set the priorities of your A to D plan, an in-house team for design, installation and maintenance, a network of approved partner installers, an in-house marketing department to promote your successes and of course your case studies. And then there's been bespoke financial packages allowing you to match your need with your budgets. The Digital Horizon brings challenges and opportunities. And as we go throughout today in the UK Telehealthcare event, we're going to see some of those challenges, but we're also going to see some of the opportunities as well. Matt highlighted a good few of them earlier on. But we call it a digital horizon because the closer you get, the further it sometimes feels away. Legrand have the products, services, solutions, and experience of a global specialist. We would like to be your trusted technology partner, helping to realize the benefits and unleash your digital premium. Thank you.
Thank you, Stuart. We've got a few questions from the delegates. I'd like to put those to you now. We'll go through a few, time permitting, as we've got quite a full agenda, as I mentioned earlier. And the first question is, what is the percent of false positive alarms that your fall detection wristband generates?
Yeah, I couldn't put a number on it, unfortunately. I don't have a percentage of false positives. Clearly, there are going to be false positives. There's no doubt about it. The difficulty with fall detection throughout the years has always been, you need to develop a device that's going to detect a fall for a heavy person and for a light person, someone that's going to fall from a distance, someone's going to slump from a chair. So you build in algorithms, and of course, as we move forward towards AI, those algorithms will become more and more complex and more and more reliable. But nevertheless, there is always a compromise. Equally, wherever you wear the device as well is going to create some false positives. For example, it has an accelerometer built into it, so it's designed to accept the acceleration between vertical and horizontal. But equally, if it's worn on the wrist, it can have an acceleration if you move your hand very quickly. So we build in other things as well. So there's lots of different elements of the device to try and eliminate or reduce the false positives, but they're always going to be there. I think the most important thing is that the call, if it's an alarm, be it false positive or otherwise, will always be placed, will always be answered, and then a specialist at the monitoring centre can triage that call and decide what the next steps are going to be, all the way up to escalation to blue lights if necessary.
Another question, are Neat products interoperable with TimeTech products, and can they be purchased through the existing TimeTech purchase routes?
So the answer to that is that is the direction of travel. Neat is now part of the Legrand Assisted Living and Healthcare business unit, and there will be convergence projects as we move forward. So we're hopeful that, you know, within these convergence projects, that interoperability will be achieved.
Another question from Peter. Does your commitment to interoperability extend to working with the other solutions providers to ensure their offerings work with AnswerLink, etc.?
So on the AnswerLink side of things, absolutely. I mean, within AnswerLink, there are multiple ways that devices can communicate with AnswerLink, and it's always been designed to be an interoperable platform in its use of open protocols. So it uses all of the open protocols for analog communication. Obviously, it uses all of the open protocols for digital communication. I mentioned TS 50134-9 for dispersed and BS 8521-2 for sheltered housing. But equally, we can interop with emails, with text messaging, with various different mechanisms for interoperability with third-party products. You know, we have many devices that are interoperable with AnswerLink now. Dockable from a health side of things, Florence from a telehealth side of things, Oyster products when it comes to GPS products, just to name a few. But we've also got not just the open protocols, but we've also got open APIs as well. So the platform is designed to be interoperable with most third-party products.
Okay, thank you, Stuart. I think we need to move along to the next section now. So for the moment, if you could stay on screen, Stuart, while I introduce the next section. So the next section will be our discussion panel. And the panel will be discussing the future of techs, what a post-COVID pre-switchover world has in store for us. This section will be chaired by Phil Bridges. Phil is the Business Development Manager at Oyster. I can see Phil has joined us there. If all the other panelists could now switch their screens on, please. And please do keep the questions coming now. Phil will possibly take questions during this section, or we will also look at taking some of those questions towards the end of the section as well. So now I'd like to hand you over to Phil Bridges for the discussion panel.
Hi, so welcome everyone. Hopefully at the start of a nice interactive panel session again. What I'd ask, just because it's great, just so everyone can experience it, if anyone who's listening in at the moment, if they can just open the chat box and just put hi, it's great because it tells us that there's actually people listening, and also it'll get you into the idea of sending a message just to the panelists and the attendees, or just the panelists if you want to. But obviously we've got a really good number of people on the call today. So we're going to be talking about the future of tech. So what a post-COVID, pre-switchover world has in store for us. It's a really open discussion. I think that there's a massive amount of questions that are likely to be thrown at us because we've got some really interesting people on the panel who I'm going to ask to introduce themselves. You've all met Stuart already. Stuart, if you're happy, I'm just going to skip over you because we've had you a couple of seconds ago. As I've got you on screen at the moment, Andy, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Phil. I'm Andrew Conroy. I'm the Commercial Director at Astroline. We are a division of Johnny Johnson Housing. We are a digital alarm receiving centre. We've been digital since 2018. And we do a lot of work to support our customers both private and corporate, in their journey to digital.
Fabulous. Sorry, Charlotte, where's my manners? I should have told you first. I do apologise.
No problems at all. Morning, everybody. My name's Charlotte Rathbone. I work for Chubb Community Care. I am our product account manager. Chubb Community Care, we work in the nurse call sector, ward and call sector, alarm receiving sector, and also we have just launched a digital 4G dispersed alarm unit.
Thanks, Charlotte. Nick, I'll jump over to you, if I may.
Thanks, Phil. I'm Nick Brown. I'm the Business Development Director for the South East of England for Tunstall Healthcare. Like many other people on the call here, we do dispersed alarms, we do group living alarms, we do alarm receiving, and hopefully later on we're going to introduce you to something that will work out in the community.
Fabulous. And Peter, finally, but by no means least.
Thank you very much, Phil. I'm Peter Reed Forrester. I'm CEO and founder of Viewable Technologies. We're the providers of an innovative range of digital first, digitally enabled healthcare, smart living solutions, including dispersed alarms such as Viewable Lifeline and Viewable Vita.
Excellent. So I really want this to be an interactive session. I'm expecting loads of questions to come in as we start, but I want to start with a nice, gentle introduction. You know, in the knowledge of the fact that we're just coming out. Hopefully, we're 2 weeks away from the end of all restrictions. Oh, please let that be the case. And we are just now starting the run up to the move from analog to digital, and it's becoming really higher priority. So each one of you, and I guess I'm probably going to start with Stuart, because Stuart's just presented and just said a load of stuff. What do you see as the key challenge that faces us all with this really sort of compressed timeline, ready to go digital, but still with an analog footprint? What do you see as the big thing that you would say, this is what we've got to talk about?
I'd say the biggest thing is the plan. Everybody's on the same journey. Everybody's got the same timeline for a destination. I think that's pretty well recognised now as 2025. And accelerating even earlier than that with stop sales in 2023 and even earlier in some cases. So we all know we're on this journey, and I think the biggest thing that we've got to discuss is almost a change of culture, a change of keeping doing what we've always done. And that's always difficult, because for the past 20 years, what we've been doing has been very, very good. And it's kept an awful lot of people safe and independently in their own homes for a lot longer. And that was a fantastic achievement. So digital has changed things, and it does bring lots and lots of challenges, but also lots and lots of opportunities. So I think the most important thing is to change culture, change the way we do things, accept that obviously digital is coming, and start to investigate not just how we can embrace it and plan for it and be ready for it, but then how can we basically optimize our use of it to make sure that our good work over the past 20 years, 30 years, keeping people independently from home can be kept going for the next 20, 30 years in the digital world.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to pass the questions straight on to Nick, but Nick, just before I do, I'm just going to apologise to David. Yeah, it depends on where you are in terms of restrictions. Just going to instantly having to correct myself. That will happen a number of times during these sessions. I tend to do this quite regularly, put my foot in my mouth. Nick.
So yeah, I mean, I think from the perspective that we're seeing at Tunstall, I think there's a number of challenges around the digital transition. Certainly in the public sector and also with private sector providers, it's around where's the budget coming from for any new kit that they need to put in, because we regularly stumble across Tunstall kit that's 25 years old. That's not going to be transitionable into a new digital age. So have they budgeted enough? Second thing really is also the capacity for change. So a lot of the guys that are dealing with this are busy day to day, running their services, and do they have the capacity to pull together a project looking at a digital transition? And then the third thing really is the knowledge and skills within teams out in the public sector and private sector. Do they actually know what they need to do, and do they have the right people to be able to deliver on it?
Yeah. Thanks, Nick. Interestingly, Charlotte, I'm going to come straight to you because I'm aware of the fact that capacity is one of the things that we've messaged about or talked about. Did you want to expand on that and also add in your other thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think, like you say, it's making a start on it, isn't it? And I think it's starting to put a plan together and to get going on it, because like we've all said, there's a lot here to be done. This is going to take a lot of time, potentially, building specific project teams and things like that. There's a lot of work here to be done. I think Stuart hit the nail on the head when you said about a culture change. And that is so important. And the thing that I really, really try to promote is the fact that, I think a lot of our service users, a lot of my customers, digital's a big headache. Digital's a problem. Digital's something that's come from somewhere left field, and all of a sudden we've got to change everything, and oh my God. But actually, I think it's so important to realise the opportunities that digital presents. And that to me is the really big thing. This isn't anything that's too strange to us. It's technology that we probably all use day to day in our personal lives. We've all got mobile phones, we've all got smartphones, we all use portals and web-based systems. It's nothing too out the ordinary there. And for me, it's just that culture change to accept that it's coming, but it's not just a big problem. It's going to really, really help our day-to-day lives. And I think as well, the COVID pandemic, if anything, has probably reiterated how important it is that we can do things remotely and we can employ technology, and utilize things like this to make our jobs and our service provisions better. Yeah,
absolutely. So Peter, probably an ideal moment to bring you in if we're talking about what the key challenges are.
From my perspective, I think the key challenge is getting it right. I think we've got far more to think about than just digital changeover. I think, and if you remember from our seminar the other week, the spectre, as I call it, of the ageing society and the effects and the impacts that will have on health and social care are huge. And I think digital is probably one of the only ways that we can mitigate those impacts and risks. And I think at the end of the day, there's a number of things people have said here that are relevant. I think image needs to change. I think the way people view care, telecare, needs to change. I mean, that funky lady behind me is one of the ways we're trying to change it. At the end of the day, we've got to encourage take up as well as the technology. So, this badge of infirmity that is out there at the moment, these pendants with red buttons on, everybody's trying to change that, and that needs to be changed. I also think the biggest challenge is moving away, and with all due respect to my fellow panelists here, is we come from we're new entrants into the market, into this specific market. We've been around supported living and care for a long time. We come from a completely digital first position. We don't have that legacy mindset to combat. We don't have that analog past to worry about. We don't have a box-based view of things, and I appreciate how difficult it must be to be able to accelerate and power past that to a real digital future. So I think the biggest challenge for commissioners and providers is to get this right, is to have the courage to look at new technologies, new way of doing things, and to realize that there is so much more to it than just that changeover.
Indeed. Okay, I think we'll probably talk a bit more about that as we go into the session. Andy, I'm going to jump across to you from the sort of the other end of the spectrum, looking back towards those people that have got skin in the game in terms of manufacturing. Let's hear your thoughts.
Thank you, and nice to be last, so that everybody's had the great ideas already.
Yeah, no.
I'm really happy to just throw you under the bus, Andy. That's fine.
You're very kind, Phil. No, I couldn't agree more. I mean, your statement's a nice segue. I think that more fundamentally than some of the things that have been pointed out, albeit all relevant, all great points, is there's a lot to be done. Where we want everybody to embrace the full opportunity the digital brings, rather than simply replace an analog version of something with a digital version of something. Digital opens up a world of possibilities, and we want to be putting in place an infrastructure that will take us forward for the next 25 years. But I think fundamentally that means that organizations need to be open to change, right? They need to work with somebody who's collaborative and responsive and who has their best interests at heart and isn't pushing a specific agenda, whether that's products or services. And I know that we all believe it, and I think it's probably mentioned briefly, but we still need to make sure that what we deliver is co-created, that the people are at the heart of what we deliver, and that we're not returning to a situation that we've had in the past where we're imposing technology and services on people. This has to be about maintaining an aspirational lifestyle for people, and promoting that independence of living, allowing people to live their best lives. So, everything has to be useful. It has to be usable. It has to be desirable, regardless of what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. So Matt's still on, by the way. So we'll draw Matt in a bit, if that's okay. If we start to talk about the opportunities, I think, Matt, if that's okay, we are sort of looking at the backward-looking bit. I'll draw you in as we start to look a bit more forward. So there's a few messages there that I just pulled out as big, and I'm really hoping that we're going to see some more questions coming in from the attendees as we go forward. Please try and keep them short, because trying to read and talk at the same time, am typically non-multitasking. But some of the big messages, culture has come through a couple of times that's been talked about, so I think that's really interesting. So obviously there is something there in terms of embracing the idea of change. Very interesting. Capacity has been mentioned a couple of times as well. There's going to be a lot of work that needs to be done during this phase with an already potentially stretched and overutilised. And I guess, personally speaking, I've been asked a question before I came on this to say, great, moving towards digital button and boxes, but actually they're making life more complex in the field rather than easier. So if there is the same prescription is being given of a button and box, what extra is it giving? And I want to throw that question out in a second. And then there's all these pieces around risk and trying to mitigate it. And then really all of you were pointing towards the opportunities. So I sort of like to throw that back at this point and say, okay, so we're aware of the fact that there's going to be change. We can see the fact that it's going to be slightly challenging. What are the opportunities? If we're now at the point where there has to be a change, and I love the fact that we've got a real mix of players on this panel, what are the opportunities? Is it that we all suddenly realise that it is actually about the end user, the person at the centre of everything? Or is it about something else? So what are the opportunities as we move towards digital? If that's okay, Matt, I'm going to fire that straight at you, because I think that probably sings more to your song sheet than anyone else's at this stage.
Thanks, Phil. Yeah, absolutely. The user centricity is an absolutely key point. Digital technology are so complex that unless we design and develop them with the user at the center, they simply won't be adopted and used. I think more than that, the current wave of digitization really presents the opportunity of greater collaboration. And it's great to hear at this event, buying into kind of common open standards, because that's, a real enabler of that. But actually, no one organization anymore can meet the complex needs of any individual. If we can really work together across organizations and even across sectors to actually provide that tapestry of care and support that every individual needs, that's something that would have been very difficult to coordinate in the past. But I really feel that digital is the key enabler for that to actually happen.
Fabulous. Fabulous point. I'm going to go the other way around now and just come straight to you, Andy, because I think, in fairness, I did make it quite tough for you on the last one. Sorry, Stuart, you've just read into what's going to happen with your piece. Andy.
Well, I mean, one of the things that we've done with exactly that in mind is we've extended the kind of support that we typically provide to a customer to package it as a consultancy service. So that is to offer completely impartial advice and guidance to any and all customers on the whole analog to digital journey. So that starts with education, because we can't assume that everybody understands what digital means for them. It then moves through a very practical kind of building your plans, and those are going to be, plans internally, bringing your staff and your collaborators along on the journey, your tenants along on the journey, working with your critical partners and setting up supply chains for the solution that you want to deliver, and also recognizing that what's right now isn't going to be right in 10 years because technology evolves and the people that you support will evolve. People will get younger, they'll have more complex needs, etc. And then, of course, putting that plan into action. So making sure that you can actually implement what you've created. So that service is designed with that capacity issue in mind. We want to advocate a consultancy type approach and offer services to people to help them navigate what can be a complex issue and a time-consuming one. And I think it's critically important that we remember that, we're talking about Internet of Things as well. So yes, it's person-centered, but that's just as much about the environment in which they live, their home. It's also about support outside of the home as well as inside of the home. Promoting independence means promoting physical activity and well-being and reducing social isolation. So it's all of that good stuff as well. I think working with somebody who has no skin in the game and who is open to the whole of the opportunity is certainly what we would be advocating for our clients, and that that means that that's taking into account a lot of separate dependencies.
Yeah, absolutely. So Charlotte, do you want to jump in on that?
Yeah, I think from my point of view, I think the benefits of digital technology are limitless. And I think for me it's twofold. There's going to be real benefits to the service user. I think what I really get excited about is becoming proactive rather than reactive. So our telecare at the moment, it sends an alarm once you've hit the floor, you know what I mean? And it's this exciting thing when we're talking about AI, machine learning, about learning somebody's routine and preventing things from happening. And to me, that's when we start getting into somewhere that's really, really quite exciting. And again, we're not using technology that's groundbreaking here. We're using stuff that's already out there in other markets, but it's never been applied to our market. And I always say that selling this stuff can be quite a hard sell, because I go out and my lovely colleagues go out as well, and we all pretty much sell the same stuff, and we've been selling the same stuff for 30 years. And now we're going to see innovation coming in as well, and some real nice bits and pieces of technology and things that are going to help people in their day-to-day lives, rather than just being a responsive alarm call. Things that can, bring real benefits and a more sort of holistic approach to not just going out when someone's fallen, but actually generally making their life better and more enjoyable. I also think, though, that there's benefits for our service providers as well. So my direct customers. And I think that's also really, really exciting. And that's where I think we can see some real efficiencies coming from digital. And yes, you say at the moment an installation might take a little bit longer for a service provider because they've got to learn something new. The efficiencies are huge. Even if we just take remote programming, the fact that you haven't got to spend time in the car driving to everybody's property to program independent or something like that. I mean, the time savings there are huge, especially if we look at some of our Scottish customers, or maybe in the Southwest, who cover massive geographical areas. The idea of having an engineer in a car for an hour to go to somebody's property to replace a pendant, it's just such a waste. So I think I really genuinely believe that the benefits are pretty limitless for digital. And I think that's, like I said before, that's the big thing for me to try and manage with our customers. My customers at the moment, a lot of them see it as a big problem, and it's not a problem. It's an opportunity.
Yeah, that's a lovely positive message. I'm going to go to Nick now, just to see if you can pick up the mantle.
So yeah, I think Charlotte touched on some really great stuff there, actually, and I think that the proactive piece is a really big piece that we're focused on at the moment, because rather than us, rather than Dave finding us, which is how it works at the moment, how about if we find Dave earlier and put some intervention in to lengthen the time that these people can live in the community independently. And I think the other thing that digital offers is a huge amount of data. And if you use the data right, then actually you can look at lots of different things. We were looking at some data from one of the services we provide. We were providing response. And there was a caller there with 893 calls in a month. Now, they were things like, my Meals on Wheels is 2 minutes too late. My bin's full. It's too hot today. It's too cold today. Now, that for me would have been a massive red flag for, actually, this is not about those calls. There's something else going on with this person. And I would say probably they're lonely. And they're using the service to call people. And with digital and with more data collection, that could be identified earlier, and that person could, it was interesting. Matt was talking about the phone calls out to people. Perhaps they just need someone to ring them every day and chat to them for 20 minutes. And just think the workload that would take off the existing people. So I think data and proactivity for me are two of the really, really big wins. The piece about not having, particularly post-pandemic, where I think we're going to be much more sensitive to sending people into other people's homes, being able to remote program and remote update, that's also going to be huge.
So, I mean, Nick, I'm just going to jump on that for a second, because literally this is singing from the same song sheet that I've been talking about for a number of years. The idea of isolation, the 893 calls in a month is not about the 893 calls in a month. Put the person back at the centre of it, and what Matt was talking about earlier. And Nick, you're going to be talking, at the end of this session about giving out technologies that enable people to go beyond their front door. These are the kind of things that stop people feeling isolated. These are the kind of things that move on. Is this an opportunity? I'm just going to get off my soapbox for a second then. Just calm down, Phil. Peter, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I think there's a few things that have come out just from various comments. I think change is a huge one. But particularly around service user needs. And because that's what it's about. It's about service user needs. And if we get that right, we get everything right. But how do we know what they're going to be in 5 years, in 10 years, in 15 years? And we have to develop solutions and deliver solutions that can change and can change easily. And I sort of struggle to see how you can do that with a box, because once the box is manufactured, it's out there, that's what it is. Certain amount of firmware updates can maybe improve its capabilities, but that's what it is. And I think we have to be brave and look at other types of solutions, but specifically software and cloud-based solutions that can actually change and add functionality, change functionality, increase richness as time goes on, and adapt quickly, easily, and over the air to changing needs. And I think that's huge. And I think the prevention better than cure thing is hugely important as well. Data. It's all about the data. And if we can produce solutions that leverage AI technology, leverage machine learning, data analytics to study people's activities of daily living, study their health. So Granny Smith can go into the doctor and say, doctor, I've had a turn. He can press a button and say, well, actually, Granny, your heart rate's been up and down like a yo-yo for the last month. Your blood pressure's steadily on the rise. You're actually not sleeping very well, are you? You're getting out of bed 2 or 3 times a night, etc., etc., etc. If we can provide those solutions, we're taking huge strides forward. And effectively, if we can do it well, if we have the courage to do it well, we'll be solving a lot of problems.
So, Stuart, sorry, you've got the end of the line on this one.
No, I understand Andrew's pain now.
Yeah,
completely. I think from an opportunity, and there are, and some great, examples from the entire panel there of opportunities that have been picked out for digital. For me, one of the biggest opportunities, immediate opportunities, is knowledge where there's never been knowledge before. And clearly that comes from data. But if you take an example where, a typical dispersed alarm has been installed on someone's telephone line, someone comes along, they plug it in, they make sure it's working, they test the peripheral from all four corners of the house so they know that they've got coverage, and then they leave with the knowledge that that unit is working, and they leave someone with a safety critical service. But if that telephone line goes down for whatever reason, they won't know. The user will know, because obviously the unit will say, I've lost my telephone line, but the other end, the ARC end, won't know that they've lost their service. So the assumption is that, you've been given a safety critical service over the past 20 years, when the reality is, if the telephone line goes down, you haven't got a safety critical service. Something that digital brings immediately is this always on technology, always on premise, where, if the connectivity is lost, it's instantly told. Somebody, a stakeholder is instantly made aware that connectivity is lost, and therefore that safety critical service is no longer safety critical. Do something else about it. And I think that in itself, when we're talking about safety critical and protection of people's lives and life critical equipment, that in itself is a massive opportunity that digital brings right out of the box. But I'd also go further than that. When I talk about the ecosystem and Teo and the ecosystem and what we've done with Elliot, right down to the peripheral, having that peripheral, that fall detector as being part of the ecosystem, means that in the past, someone is prone to falling. You want to know if that person does fall, so you can react potentially all the way up to blue lights. So you give them something like a fall detector, and you show them how to use it, and you put it on their wrist, and then you leave thinking that you've left them a safety critical service. But the reality is, if that fall detector is then taken off at night when I go to bed and not put back on in the morning, then there's no way you're going to know if that person has fallen over. The fact that you've got no alarms coming through to the ARC is probably going to be deemed a good thing. That person hasn't fallen. But if the reality is it's just been left on the bedside table and not being worn, then clearly it's not doing its job. So having that technology with a permanent data flow from one end to the other can basically inform the stakeholder, the ARC, that device isn't moving. It hasn't been worn. It hasn't moved for several hours. Therefore, one of three things: either go back in and tell them that they've got to wear it, that they should wear it, retrain them so they understand the importance of it, or think of plan B. You still want to know if that person is in danger or at a crisis because they fall, and therefore, if they're not going to be able to use a fall detector, then what's plan B? What else can we do? Because we still need to keep that person safe and independently in their own home for longer.
So that's a fascinating point, and I would say, open to all to discuss as we move forward with this. I would just say there's a couple of bits that have come in that I think are very are interesting. There's been a couple of conversations about falls. It seems to be the perennial conversation is about fall detection. I don't know how much detail we could get into this within this, because I don't know that the technology is going to change with the switch over from analog to digital, but potentially I'm just maybe a note for Jerry and Terence. A session on falls is looking like it could be quite popular, so let's maybe have another panel discussion on that on a future event. There's a bit of commenting around informal carers, and I think that's potentially there's something there that we could talk about in terms of, in the world of digital, once we've got it off the copper cable, once we've got it into the world where there is a cloud attached to it potentially, we're all seem to be talking about those same things, and I'm aware that's something that we do within Oyster. Does that then mean that the informal carer can be more involved in the journey? So talking to with Stuart, your comment about we've got to get away from protecting people's bedside cabinets, haven't we? That's because that's where their pendant has been for the last 6 months. That's not a good use of the technology. That's not great in terms of their outcome. So what does that look like? And also I think we've all sort of talked a little bit about digital and data, and then what's the extrapolation of that data? Where do you see that going? Because, you know, we can see internally here, we call people if they're not using their device, because we've realized that if they're not using it, it's got no value. So we ring them as soon as it goes inactive. That's something that comes with data. So with the knowledge that we're moving towards this digital, sorry, trying to compress my never-ending witter, with the move towards that, what are your thoughts about the big wins? Where are we going to see the real engagement, the game changers? Where's the return on investment going to come from? I realise it's a really open question, but any of you, by all means, just jump in.
Well, I think certainly the game changer, and I think a few people have picked it out as part of the opportunities, is that prediction prevention agenda. You know, if you taking falls again, maybe we really do need a different panel on just specifically on falls. But anything, any crisis, if you can prevent it, then you can save. And I'm not just talking about saving financially, you know, but I'm also talking about saving personally as well. You know, if the fall doesn't take place, then the ambulance doesn't have to be called, the hospital bed doesn't have to be filled, the hip operation doesn't have to take place. But perhaps most importantly, the confidence that that person has to live independently doesn't have to be lost. So if we can use this data, and of course AI and machine learning and advances in algorithms and all sorts of different ways of having early intervention opportunities presented to us that we can action and prevent, then, you know, I think that is going to be the big game changer. And of course, you know, you talk about ROI, and ROI is often associated with monetary side of things, but clearly there's always been an element of what, you know, the savings that are made in social care, you know, the savings are made in health. So basically, you know, if that person is not passed from the home to the hospital bed, then the saving is made at the hospital bed end. But of course, you know, we need to make sure that in order to make that saving at that end, that social care and tech is invested in accordingly.
Yeah. I agree with Stuart that there's huge savings and huge efficiency gains to be made, and there's just, I think Charlotte said earlier on, you know, that just the opportunities are unending. But I think the biggest win is that we can help people live longer, better, healthier, more independent lives. I think that's the biggest win. And prevention, keeping people out of hospital, Stuart, you just alluded to that as well. You know, looking at how people live, helping them to understand that this tech is not about Big Brother, it's about supporting and assisting them. And I think giving that, I think that one of the biggest wins is for people to change people's perceptions of telecare. If we could change that, we're on an absolute winner. And people should see it. I mean, I'm invested in this. I'm 60 years of age, 61 this year, so I'm part of the new old. And hopefully I won't be needing a pendant for a while yet, but I've got a smartwatch on. I look at that, I want, you know, it helps me monitor my health, everything. And I think that's a very important thing. It's training me to be more caring about my health. And I think we need to help people understand that this sort of support will help them live healthier, longer, more independently. In turn, that will keep them out of hospital. It will keep hospital beds clear. It will cut costs. It will increase efficiencies. The benefits are there, but I think it's hugely about the end user. We've really got to focus on the end user. What are the benefits to the end user, and how we can persuade them to take up those benefits?
I would totally agree with Peter. I think actually what tends to happen when we talk about technology-enabled care, we talk about the technology, we forget about the people that are attached to it. And I think the interesting thing is one of the other things we also have to look at with the digital progression is where's the ability to close the gap between health and social care. They are still, ICS or no ICS journey, they are still seen almost as two totally separate silos. So, you know, I come from having worked in an AHSN for 5.5 years before I joined Tunstall. And what's really interesting is even we couldn't get them to work together. they were paying lip service to the ICS, but for the guys that are diabetic with high blood pressure, low activity, they're obese, they are the next generation of box and pendant. But actually, if you monitor their health and get on that earlier and use that digital information to feed it in, the combination of the two is really powerful tool to enable people to stay at home, live better lives, and also be much less likely to fall. So yeah, I think the integration is also another big piece that digital can bring to the party. But for me, the really key element is this is not something you do to people. This is something that people are going to have to transition to a point where they want it, as opposed to OT comes around, ticks some boxes, and the next thing you know, ticks some boxes on the floor. Next thing you know, there's somebody in your house screwing something on your wall that you never even really wanted in the first place.
Yeah. So, by the way, just my personal perspective, technology-enabled living. I really like the word living, not care. I think, only because, I'm in my 50s now, and I don't want to be cared for when I get there. I want to grow old disgracefully, frankly, and I'm going to work towards that. And anyone who doesn't believe it needs to come and see how I live my life. So anyone else want to jump in on that? Because we've got a couple of minutes left, I think.
I think, Peter, your point there is really interesting about the smartwatch, and the way I see it from kind of working on technology-enabled living, perhaps earlier in the chain with service user groups that aren't just elderly, is that it's going to be much more of a transition. Like right now, it's kind of, do you have tech or do you not have it? As the generation grows and ages, that is used to wearing sensors on their Apple Watch. The next Apple Watch is rumored to potentially include a blood glucose sensor. So that there's a direction of travel there. I think it will be a much more gradual transition. And I think that will inevitably kind of change the industry, because it's less, it's going to be less and less about just bespoke hardware that's needed in a specialist context, and about easing into and integrating with the hardware that individuals are already using. And I think as well we've really got to consider. I think it's interesting the falls point. To some extent, falls are a great example, aren't they? Because they're so binary, and they're relatively easy for us to get our head around how they're kind of prevented or how they're detected. I think that aspect of our industry, is kind of the kernel around which everything else will be built. It's much harder to see whether somebody's life feels worth living than it does whether they are on the floor right now or not. There isn't a sensor for that in the same sort of way. But I think, to speak to Nick's point about the integration of health and social care, that's a bridge that we're going to have to cross, not just from a kind of practical point of view, but from an ethical one as well.
Yeah. Okay.
We can help make growing old fun.
Yeah.
Because it should be. End of story. It shouldn't be. We shouldn't be giving people something that makes them think, "Oh right, I've got this. I'm ready for the knackers yard now. That's me. I'm done." We need to give them something that makes them think, "I've got a real future ahead of me," and that's going to be the trick. That's going to be the bit of magic, and I'm sure we can do it.
So to just try and draw these bits together, and there's a couple of little bits that I'll just pull out of the questions and the bits that have been firing in as well. Interestingly, there was an all-party parliamentary group that met quite recently, and the biggest focus of that was actually talking about how we get government to make the ROI make sense, because actually I think that's another part of the bigger picture about the shift to digital, because it is a shift, and obviously we can all see that. But what's been really great to hear within, quite a diverse panel in terms of, what our perception of the future could be. But it's nice to see lots of talk about proactive, lots of talk about data being used for early intervention, warnings, insights, proactive, preventative, holistic approaches, person-centered, absolutely thinking about what the end result is, not necessarily here's a piece of technology, I wonder what I could get it to do. I think, there's been a little bit of that from all of us, and I say that as a manufacturer as well. I think that hopefully is our route of travel. Thank you very much, all of the panel. I've literally just taken us to the end of our allotted slot, so I'm sure Terence is about to reappear on the screen any second. I've really enjoyed that. Thank you very much for your time, all of you. It's been an absolute pleasure. And I look forward to the rest of the presentations.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you for chairing that. I think the conversation could go on, but we are time limited. And also thank you to Stuart, Nick, Charlotte, Peter, Andy and Matt for their contributions. So if Nick, if you could, and I can see you are prepared for your presentation. So Nick is the Business Development Manager, and he will be presenting on the new Tunstall Go. And I can see your presentation there is ready to go. Thank you, Nick.
Thanks very much. Well, everybody actually. Yeah, it's great to have this opportunity to come and share a piece of new technology with you. And I think it ties very much to the conversation that we've just been having, which is traditionally we've looked at buttons and boxes, and actually that's not how people want to live their lives these days. They also want to be able to get out and about into the community. So we are, fingers crossed, emerging from the lockdown phases of what has been a very challenging time for a lot of people. Interestingly, figures show that there is a large increase in the levels of anxiety being expressed by people. So for best part of a year, the government have told us stay at home, don't go out, don't mix with people. And particularly if you're a vulnerable person, be that old or with an underlying health condition. And that's being reflected in data being collected by Office for National Statistics, which is showing that actually 19 million adults are reporting higher than normal levels of anxiety. Now, that is almost an inevitability. As colleagues that I used to work with have said within the health system, they are seeing a massive influx in through the GP system and through mental health systems of people who are very specifically identifying that they're now experiencing a level of mental health issue that they didn't have previously. So how does this affect the technology-enabled living? And I really like that, actually, the living, not care environment. So how do we support people post-pandemic? So here's two case examples. One is an 18-year-old wheelchair user, previously very independent within the community, but has been shielding for the best part of the last 12, 14 months. Subsequent to receiving both the vaccinations, are now able to go back into the community, doesn't want to go back to college where he was studying, really, really anxious in public environments. So even little things like being able to go out around the village, meet up with friends, go to the local shop, which used to do, they are all now really challenging, to the point where this individual's actually been referred to the GP with the possibility of receiving antidepressant, anti-anxiety drugs to deal with the panic attacks and the fear of leaving the house. The other one is an 83-year-old, no major health issues other than maybe a little difficulty with a knee, but prior to the pandemic was also really active in the community, doing all of their own shopping, meeting with friends once or twice a week, active in some of the village societies. She's now suffering from palpitations, and again, that's been investigated. There is no physical reason for this. This is solely a psychological issue of anxiety, loneliness, and panic. Now, what I haven't told you up to this point is that happens to be my son, and that happens to be my mum. And I've just seen the level of deterioration that they've suffered over the last year. And for me, it's a real challenge. But is there something we can do to support these people back out into the community? Because we know there is a direct link between social interaction and mental and physical health. So if we can get both of these individuals back out doing what they used to do, then most of the problems that they're exhibiting at the moment will fall away. So what have Tunstall brought to the party to address this? We've recently launched a new product called Tunstall Go. It's interesting that historically we've seen a lot of tech that was about monitoring people in their home. And actually, what you want to be able to do is get people out of their own home. The fact that they're tied to their own home is a challenge in itself and brings with it other health-related issues. What is it? It's a portable device with fall detection built into it. It has a 1 to 2 month battery charge, which you can charge via induction, so there's nothing to plug in, so it's a wireless charger. It's got illumination to flag when it needs charging. It also sends out a notification to the ARC, so the Alarm Response Centre. But most of all, it's a two-way speech device. So what this is giving people is the ability to go out in the community with the same level of monitoring, protection and support that they've got at home with their traditional button box fall detector. So if they just want to go to the local shop to buy a paper and a pint of milk, they can do that knowing that if anything untoward happens, that they can get an emergency response straight away. They can talk to somebody straight away. And that person will know what their exact location is if they need any support over and above speaking to somebody sent out to them. What it has built in is GPS location. So on pressing the button and asking for help, that will automatically notify the receiving center right down to a GPS location, which allows people to locate them. Again, there's two-way speech on this. So what it does address is some of the digital exclusion as well, where people don't have, particularly older people, they may not have a smartphone. So, if they don't have a smartphone to take out of their house with them to use as their support, this is an alternative and brings them included into the digital world and the digital monitoring outside of their own home. So battery and charging, always an issue that people come back to with anything that needs recharging is, is the battery going to be working? How do they remember to do it? We have an induction charging plate that you just literally have to put the device on. It only needs to be done every 1 to 2 months. Again, depends on how much time they're spending with this device out in the community and how much it's being used. But voice messages and lights will indicate at 20% capacity. And it also sends that signal up to the monitoring center. So that makes sure that if they don't act upon it, and you will get a signal sent through if the charging has been brought back to an acceptable level, that a call can be made into the user to say, can you please pop this on your charger? And as you can see, there's a color-coded ring around the edge as well that allows for visual notification as well, should a battery get to a low state. So that's the product. What I'd like to say about it is this is putting that arm around somebody's shoulder, say, look, you're not alone. You can go out there. If you don't feel comfortable, we can deliver to you some support straight away. People will know where you are. So please don't be frightened about going back outside. And I'm pretty sure that in the case of both my son and my mum, that this probably is something that will allow them to get back to living what was their day-to-day life pre-pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick, for that very informative presentation. We have a conversation regarding the dial back SAIP. I don't know if you saw that comment that came up. And is this a 4G or version or 3G version?
So currently it's running on 3G. But yes, it is a version of the ChipTech Go products as well.
Excellent.
I see the question about can it connect to an ARC run by a local authority? Yes, it can. At the moment, we're running this on Tunstall Response as well, so you can use it as a direct into our own response service. But yes, it can be set up for local authorities to run this device on their ARC as well.
Excellent. Thank you again, Nick, for your presentation. So now I'd like to move on to our final presentation today. And the last presentation will be given by Charlotte Rathbone, and Charlotte is the Product Key Account Manager. I can see Charlotte joining us now. If you could start your presentation, please.
Fabulous. Let's just check that this loads up okay. Can you see my screen, Terence?
Yes, if you could put it into presentation, perfect.
Fabulous.
Thank you very much, Charlotte.
No problem at all. So good afternoon. Thank you, Terence, Jerry, for putting this on. I think it's been a great event so far. As you know, I've sort of already introduced myself. My name's Charlotte. I work for Chubb Community Care, and I am our Product Key Account Manager. So what I want to do today is to introduce you to our new dispersed alarm unit. Chubb do more, obviously, than dispersed alarm units. We have call receiving platforms, ward and call, nurse call, but today I'm going to focus on our new digital 4G dispersed alarm unit. So a little bit of background to why we're all here chatting today. As we know, BT are changing the way it provides its telephone services, and we're going to move from analog to digital. So the timeline for the transfer is for everyone to be fully digital by 2025. And interestingly, even though there's been a global pandemic, nothing seems to have shifted on that at all. It still seems to be very much the aim. And as we are all aware, it is going to impact us. You know, the majority of telecare that we use out there is reliant on the PSTN analog network. And we are seeing, you know, increasing call failures, using sort of hybrid systems and things like that. So it is our recommendation that we move over to a digital solution. The failures that we've observed so far, we've seen some signalling corruptions and time delays in calls going through. So this is the traditional analog units, legacy units trying to use the digital networks. And we've taken quite a lot of guidance from the Swedish experience. So Sweden went digital back in 2007, and it was their recommendation that the hybrid analog solutions using the ACA should be avoided, and that really a full digital system is critical to ensure that alarm services are delivered. So this is our unit. This is our 4G Care Unity digital alarm. Now, when we designed this unit, there were sort of two things really that were really critical to us. And the first one was all about reducing risk. At the end of the day, this is potentially life-saving equipment, and we want to make sure that call goes through. So we've engineered this, and I'll go through the reasons how we're going to do this, but to reduce risk as much as possible. And the other consideration for us was to make the transition as easy as possible for service providers and for our customers. You know, one of the very first things that we spoke about on the panel was the challenge and the difficulty that there are in rolling this out. And as I keep saying, there's a lot of opportunities there, but what we can't get away from is the fact that this is a really big piece of work for service providers. And we've tried in many different ways to make it as easy as possible. So the unit itself, as you can see, it is quite a traditional dispersed alarm unit. It's got, you know, your three big red buttons on there, microphone, speaker, backup battery, and all that kind of thing. We see this as a sort of intermediary solution. So this is what we hope is going to help our customers and service users transition over to digital. So it's not breaking too many molds to begin with. It's familiar to people, and hopefully it's going to make that transition nice and simple. So overview, multiple communication pathways, and that is our real, how we really tried to make this as, to reduce risk, as much as possible. So the unit can communicate over Ethernet, so that's the residence broadband, 4G, 3G, 2G, and while available, it can even still use the PSTN network, and it's got the ability to send SMS text messages as well. The thought behind this is that if any one of these become compromised, the unit's still got the ability to put that call through. And that for us is what's really, really important. That call has to go through. And we've got these various ways of doing it. So in a digital protocol, the unit communicates over Skype. And again, from that, we've taken quite a lot of direction from Sweden and what they found to be most successful over there. The unit's got crystal clear two-way audio. That's something that we've seen a real improvement on with the digital units. And as we've already alluded to quite a bit, it's got the ability to program it remotely. So you can do that via a user web portal, a USB connection. We've got a programming tool that connects, if you connect the unit to a laptop or PC via USB. And it's even got some really nice remote SMS text messaging programming as well. So as long as your core platform allows you to, you can actually program these units by sending them a text message. As I said, something that was really key for us is trying to make this transition as simple as possible. So we're giving you flexible buying options. We've got rental available and we've got purchase available as well. The units themselves are completely backwards compatible with our full range of 869 megahertz telecare. Again, we've really tried to think about making this transition as simple as possible for service providers. You know, we have customers out there that maybe spent 40, 50, 60,000 pounds with us last year on smoke detectors, heat detectors, pendants and things like that. And what we didn't want is them to have to go out and rebuy all those things again. Again, trying to make it, you know, we realise how expensive this is going to be, and we're trying to, you know, make it as easy as possible. Again, in terms of flexibility, you can buy the unit with or without a SIM card. That's completely up to you. We are partnering with providers and we will be providing a managed end-to-end, so machine-to-machine roaming SIM card solution if you want it. The unit's got greater than 24 hours backup battery and it comes with a 24-month warranty as standard. So some of the features and benefits of the unit, it's got an I'm OK function. So again, we're looking at more proactive solutions. It's got an app for local monitoring. So one of the things that came up in the panel discussion was about informal carers. This is a really nice feature that we've got whereby the unit is linked to an app on a phone that an informal carer can have, and messages can come through locally, you know, status messages, alarm calls and things like that. It's always connected, so always on technology, and it's sending a heartbeat every 30 seconds. Again, being proactive, so we know if for any reason there's any troubles with the unit. It's got schedule alarm functions on there. So for things like wander alert, bed exit solutions, you can just have them activated in the evening or during the day or whatever works for your service user. It really is a very configurable and flexible unit. There's a lovely dashboard on the Care Unity portal that provides an overview of the fault status, but across the entire estate of units that you've got out there. We've got configurable call type reporting. So the unit's set up, you can send different alarms via different pathways and things like that. So you could, for example, have alarm messages go into one recipient, and you could have status messages going to another. You could sometimes have family getting messages and things like that. Again, the options really are endless for this. It's got a really nice little feature that's got audible fault status messages. So last week I was testing one of these units myself. There's a fault on the unit, you hold down the green button and it tells you, it announces to you, you know, what the problem is with the unit. And it's also got the ability for the control centre to dial into the unit and open up speech with no interaction from the service user. So if for some reason the control centre wants to contact the resident, they can do that without having to get the user to actually do anything themselves. And that's all done by PIN numbers and things like that for security. So the big question, why 4G? Something really important to us when we were designing the unit. As I keep saying, you know, we do realise what a big task this is for service providers, and what we don't want is them to have to go through this in another year's time or 2 years' time or anything. We wanted to make our unit as future-proofed as possible, and that's why we took the decision to implement 4G in our unit. It took a lot of time. It probably set us back a couple of months, but the decision was made, and we really do believe that that was the right decision. So this is the global sunset activity for 2G and 3G and some of the projected shutdown dates for it. And you can see, some of these aren't that far away. 2G and 3G will not be around forever. And 4G obviously is the latest. And like I said, we really wanted to make this as future-proofed as possible. So congestion levels on 4G sites are already increasing. If additional spectrum is required for 4G, then it's thought that the operators may need to refarm from 2G and 3G spectrum. Cellular network operators are going to reduce capital expenditure in the supply of support of 2G and 3G networks. That's inevitable. They're reaching the end of their lives. Investment's going to be put in 4G and future technologies. So the safe option, we believe, to future-proof your estate is to invest in 4G. So I've got here a couple of schematics that show how the unit can be set up. So the first thing that I just want to say about our unit, and something that I think is a really important selling point for it, is it does have an analog connection. So as we've been saying, there's a big task out there, there's a lot of expenditure and a really big job that local authorities and service providers have to upgrade their estate to digital. So the real selling point for me on this unit is the fact that for the time being, it works as an analog unit. So what you can start doing is start deploying these units out to your customer base, start getting your estate ready for digital. But for the time being, you don't have to worry about broadband, SIM cards and things like that. You can use it just at the moment as a normal analog unit, but you've got the security and the peace of mind to know that your unit's set up and ready and future-proofed and ready for the digital switch. However, these schematics, if we now think we're in 2025, PSTN's gone, and this is how we would set units up in a digital world. As I keep saying, we're all about multiple communication pathways to reduce risk. So this would be our ideal setup. You can see here that the Care Unity Digital is connected to the home broadband and also to the mobile network as well. So it's plugged into the Ethernet and it's got a SIM card in as well. If either of those become compromised, the call's still going to go through. That would be our preferred option one. However, if you want to use it as a purely GSM unit, your resident doesn't have broadband for whatever reason, you just want to use the SIM card, that's absolutely fine as well. And you can see there's a little schematic there. I will be sending out these slides. I've provided them to Julie, so you can study them in more detail. I know it's quite a lot of information there. So our proposed SIM offering, like I've said, you can take the unit with a SIM, you can take the unit without a SIM if you've already got a provider. But we will be offering machine-to-machine roaming SIMs. These are from providers that actively monitor the network, so they're constantly looking for issues and things like that and looking to fix them. We're going to be selling them with a monthly bundle that includes 5 minutes of voice and 50 meg of data per user per month. And the nice thing about that is the data and the voice is going to be pooled across the whole estate. We all know that we've got some people who, I think, 863 calls a month, and we've got some people that never use it. So pooling it should even out any sort of disparities in usage. There's going to be a SIM management portal. So again, we're seeing these real benefits of digital, that you can be sat in an office and you can see your whole estate out there and you can manage it as well. And like I say, you can buy the unit with an initial 24-month SIM card. So the telecare, something that I think is really exciting about this unit is it is going to open up new telecare. All of our telecare is available on next day delivery. We have a dedicated telecare helpline to assist you with installation. And as I keep saying, our range of 869 megahertz telecare is completely backwards compatible with the full spectrum of Chubb products. And the nice thing about our Chubb telecare is it works on our Chubb nurse call system, our Chubb boarding call system, and our dispersed alarm units as well. So for our customers that maybe have different types of Chubb systems across their estate, there's that continuity. So for staff training, for stock holding, for things like that, you're only holding one type of telecare. We will be launching some new telecare to come out with the digital alarm unit, and we'll be using Verso and also our Verso Plus protocol as well. So the new pendants that will come in that are coming with the Chubb digital unit as standard are our Chubb Verso Plus pendants. They come with a neck cord, a wrist strap, and a dexterity adapter. And the nice thing about these is they have got a much improved range on our current offering. So we're seeing up to 400 meters line of sight on this equipment. Battery life is also much improved as well, up to 6 years, and the units are waterproof as well. We're also going to be launching a Chubb Verso pendant, so a new pendant that's compatible with our older units as well. So the big buzzword at the moment, and certainly something that we've seen from the TSA, is interoperability. So Chubb can supply our universal transmitter, which is a radio module. It comes with or without a test button, and that allows virtually any third-party equipment to be connected to our products. We've successfully utilised third-party equipment from Alertip, Pivotel, Possum, Ramble Guard, and like's already been mentioned on the call today, we can't be experts in everything. And it's good that we can utilise equipment from other providers. Our Chubb Care Unity Digital can be used with a wide variety of call receiving platforms. In fact, we believe that anyone that can accept SCAPE protocols will be able to manage calls from Chubb Care Unity Digital. And we have been accepted on the innovation programme, so we've done some fact testing with the UMO platform already. So in summary, the units are now immediately available. We're all about reducing risk with multiple communication pathways, getting yourself future-proofed, making sure that this buy will last you for as long as possible with 4G technology. You've got some real efficiencies and benefits from remote programming. The units are completely backwards compatible with our existing range of Chubb sensors, and we're offering flexible buying options as well. So we've got rental, we've got with a SIM, without a SIM, with a pendant, without a pendant, sorry. So we really have designed this to try and make the transition from analog to digital as smooth as possible. My number and email address are on there. So if you want any more information at all about this unit, if you're ready to do a test, then that'd be fabulous. So please get in touch.
Thank you very much, Charlotte. Very informative presentation. There's a question from Alistair regarding the AHSN, and have you found them helpful, and have you been cooperating with them?
Regarding the what, sorry?
The AHSN, which is the Academic Health Science Networks.
It's not something I'm familiar with, sorry. I can certainly go away and find that out, but it's not something that I know about, I'm afraid.
All right, thank you very much. So now I'd like to say thank you to all the presenters. I'd like to say thank you to Stuart, Nick, Charlotte, Peter, Andy, and Matt. Thanks to Phil for chairing the discussion panel during this session. Thank you for keeping to time as well. All the questions that are on chat, the unanswered questions, will be forwarded to the presenters for responding to. I'd like to now hand you over to Jerry Allmark, who is the Managing Director of UKTelehealthcare. Jerry.
Thanks, Terence. Thank you very much, everyone, for participating today. We've had some really interesting presentations and the panel session as well. I'd really like to just cover some quick takeaways from the sessions and really look at some of the highlights for me. The really positive messages about digital coming through right from the beginning, from Matt's presentation, around how we are using digital not just as a technology, but to work with both the voluntary sector and carers, a really important piece of news there. Looking at preventative care has always been a big issue for us, and really identified there by Matt in his presentation as well, and tying into the issues around loneliness and social isolation, and how the digital platforms can be used to really help people, particularly during the times of the pandemic. In terms of looking at big data, digital is being used to capture data, to look at preventative care, the analytics of that data, and that came through very strongly in Stuart's presentation. Continuing in the panel session, I think one of the highlights for me was Charlotte's comment around digital not being the problem, but being the opportunity. And that is something for us to really learn from, because we've been very much around looking at the issues around digital rather than the opportunities we have to ensure that we are making the most of the digital switchover. Also from the panel, the positive messages came around how digital is allowing remote programming, remote updates. So particularly again during the pandemic, where we are given the opportunity to be able to support people, but not having that physical contact. And really some quite significant real life cases from Tunstall and Nick Brown's presentation, and very much a message about the technology not keeping people in their home, but actually getting people the freedom to move around. Very important to all of us. And finally, the panel came up with an invention, a new terminology, which I think everyone really supported, and that was around technology-enabled living instead of technology-enabled care. So are we going to go from text to tell? Well, you heard it here first. So thank you very much to all the panelists. Really interesting day, and I'm very grateful for all the participants who've joined us. We've had a record number today. We've been running these events since August 2020, and we've got some very strong panelists from both the UK and abroad, some really strong presenters, and we want to just build on that, because I think some of the information and ideas, and we're ready to talking about ideas for future events where we'll look at falls, social isolation, all those speciality subjects on the panels. So I think what I'd like to see is more of you become active in this. From our point of view, all these events are funded and supported by our members. So if you're a supplier or provider and you've enjoyed coming to these events since August, do have a look at how much more you could get out of it and contribute to this by becoming members as well. So do talk to Terence or myself or Julia, or have a look at the website and think about how you can be much more part of it through membership. We have 2 more events planned for June, one on the 15th and one on the 29th. The agendas for both of those are on the website. The mail outs for the 15th have gone out already, and we've got some quite strong panel sessions as both of those as well. I really hope you can join us at those events, and our future events that we're planning for will be in September. So if you've got any ideas for those, do get in contact, and we'll do our best to fit in as many subjects that are really relevant to the industry that we can. So thank you very much, everyone. Look forward to seeing you all again on the 15th, and have a safe day. Thank you. Goodbye.